1번. 다음 글에 드러난 Shirley의 신경으로 가장 적절한 것은?
On the way home, Shirley noticed a truck parked in front of the house across the street. New neighbors. Shirley was dying to know about them. Do you know anything about the new neighbors? She asked Pa at dinner. He said, yes, and there's one thing that may be interesting to you. Shirley had a billion more questions. Pa said joyfully, they have a girl just your age. Maybe she wants to be your playmate. Shirley nearly dropped her fork on the floor. How many times had she prayed for a friend? Finally, her prayers were answered. She and the new girl could go to school together, play together, and become best friends. Number 1 curious and excited, number 2 sorry and upset, number 3 jealous and annoyed, number 4 calm and relaxed, number 5 disappointed and unhappy. The answer is number 1 curious and excited.
2번. 다음 글에 드러난 마티우의 신경 변화로 가장 적절한 것은?
One Saturday morning, Matthew's mother told Matthew that she was going to take him to the park. A big smile came across his face, as he loved to play outside. He ate his breakfast and got dressed quickly so they could go. When they got to the park, Matthew ran all the way over to the swing set. That was his favorite thing to do at the park. But the swings were all being used. His mother explained that he could use the slide until a swing became available, but it was broken. Suddenly, his mother got a phone call and she told Matthew they had to leave. His heart sank. Number 1 embarrassed indifferent, number 2 excited disappointed, number 3 cheerful ashamed, number 4 nervous touched, number 5 scared relaxed. The answer is number 2 excited disappointed.
3번. 다음 글에 드러난 Salva의 신경 변화로 가장 적절한 것은?
Salva had to raise money for a project to help Southern Sudan. It was the first time that Salva spoke in front of an audience. There were more than 100 people. Salva's knees were shaking as he walked to the microphone. Hello, he said. His hands trembling, he looked out at the audience. Everyone was looking at him. At that moment, he noticed that every face looked interested in what he had to say. People were smiling and seemed friendly. That made him feel a little better, so he spoke into the microphone again. Hello, he repeated. He smiled, feeling at ease, and went on. I am here to talk to you about a project for Southern Sudan. Number 1 nervous relieved, number 2 indifferent excited, number 3 worried disappointed, number 4 satisfied frustrated, number 5 confident embarrassed. The answer is number 1 nervous relieved.
4번. 다음 글의 상황에 나타난 분위기로 가장 적절한 것은?
In the middle of the night, Matt suddenly awakened. He glanced at his clock. It was 3:23. For just an instant he wondered what had wakened him. Then he remembered. He had heard someone come into his room. Matt sat up in bed, rubbed his eyes, and looked around the small room. Mom? He said quietly, hoping he would hear his mother's voice, assuring him that everything was all right. But there was no answer. Matt tried to tell himself that he was just hearing things. But he knew he wasn't. There was someone in his room. He could hear rhythmic, scratchy breathing and it wasn't his own. He lay awake for the rest of the night. Number 1 humorous and fun, number 2 boring and dull, number 3 calm and peaceful, number 4 noisy and exciting, number 5 mysterious and frightening. The answer is number 5 mysterious and frightening.
5번. 다음 글에 드러난 아이의 신경 변화로 가장 적절한 것은?
When my mom came home from the mall with a special present for me, I was pretty sure I knew what it was. I was absolutely thrilled because I would soon communicate with a new cell phone. I was daydreaming about all of the cool apps and games I was going to download. But my mom smiled really big and handed me a book. I flipped through the pages, figuring that maybe she had hidden my new phone inside. But I slowly realized that my mom had not got me a phone and my present was just a little book, which was so different from what I had wanted. Number 1 worried furious, number 2 surprised relieved, number 3 ashamed confident, number 4 anticipating satisfied, number 5 excited disappointed. The answer is number 5 excited disappointed.
6번. 다음 글에 나타난 아이의 신경 변화로 가장 적절한 것은?
It was 2 hours before the submission deadline, and I still hadn't finished my news article. I sat at the desk, but suddenly, the typewriter didn't work. No matter how hard I tapped the keys, the levers wouldn't move to strike the paper. I started to realize that I would not be able to finish the article on time. Desperately, I rested the typewriter on my lap and started hitting each key. With as much force as I could manage. Nothing happened, thinking something might have happened inside of it. I opened the cover, lifted up the keys, and found the problem: a paperclip. The keys had no room to move. After picking it out, I pressed and pulled some parts. The keys moved smoothly again. I breathed deeply and smiled. Now I knew that I could finish my article on time. Number 1, confident nervous. Number 2, frustrated relieved. Number 3, bored amazed. Number 4, indifferent curious. Number 5, excited disappointed. The answer is number 2, frustrated relieved.
7번. 다음 글에 드러난 클레어의 신경으로 가장 적절한 것은?
Clara, an 11-year-old girl, sat in the back seat of her mother's car with the window down. The wind from outside blew her brown hair across her ivory pale skin. She sighed deeply. She was sad about moving and was not smiling. Her heart felt like it hurt. The fact that she had to leave everything she knew broke her heart. 11 years, that was a long time to be in one place. And build memories and make friends. She had been able to finish out the school year with her friends. Which was nice, but she feared she would face the whole summer. And the coming school year alone. Clara sighed heavily. Number 1, calm and relaxed. Number 2, jealous and irritated. Number 3, excited and amused. Number 4, bored and indifferent. Number 5, sorrowful and worried. The answer is number 5, sorrowful and worried.
8번. 다음 글에 드러난 아이의 신경 변화로 가장 적절한 것은?
I board the plane, take off, and climb out into the night sky. Within minutes, the plane shakes hard. And I freeze, feeling like I'm not in control of anything. The left engine starts losing power and the right engine is nearly dead now. Rain hits the windscreen and I'm getting into heavier weather. I'm having trouble keeping up the airspeed. When I reach for the microphone to call the center to declare an emergency, my shaky hand accidentally bumps the carburetor heat levers, and the left engine suddenly regains power. I push the levers to full. Both engines backfire and come to full power. Feeling that the worst is over, I find my whole body loosening up and at ease. Number 1, ashamed delighted. Number 2, terrified relieved. Number 3, satisfied regretful. Number 4, indifferent excited. Number 5, hopeful disappointed. The answer is number 2, terrified relieved.
9번. 다음 글에 드러난 아이의 신경 변화로 가장 적절한 것은?
I was diving alone in about 40 feet of water when I got a terrible stomachache. I was sinking and hardly able to move. I could see my watch and knew there was only a little more time on the tank before I would be out of air. It was hard for me to remove my weight belt. Suddenly I felt a prodding from behind me under the armpit. My arm was being lifted forcibly. Around into my field of vision came an eye. It seemed to be smiling. It was the eye of a big dolphin. Looking into that eye, I knew I was safe. I felt that the animal was protecting me, lifting me toward the surface. Number 1, excited bored. Number 2, pleased angry. Number 3, jealous thankful. Number 4, proud embarrassed. Number 5, frightened relieved. The answer is number 5, frightened relieved.
10번. 다음 글의 상황에 나타난 분위기로 가장 적절한 것은?
The chief called for little Fawn to come out, and took her right hand and Sam's right hand and tied them together with a small piece of leather. He gave a big yell and told Sam, "You're now a married man." As soon as the wedding ceremony was over, the celebration began. Fawn and Sam sat on blankets, as young boys and girls began dancing to flute music and drum beats. They danced in circles, making joyful sounds and shaking their hands with arms raised over their heads. Fawn rose up and joined them. People started clapping and singing. Fawn and Sam were two happy people. Number 1, boring. Number 2, scary. Number 3, calm. Number 4, humorous. Number 5, festive. The answer is number 5, festive.
11번. 다음 글에 드러난 놈의 신경으로 가장 적절한 것은?
Norm and his friend Jason went on a winter camping trip. In the middle of the night, Norm suddenly woke up sensing something was terribly wrong. To his surprise, the stove was glowing red. Norm shook Jason awake and told him to look at the stove. Jason said he had filled it with every piece of wood he could fit into it. Norm thought the cabin was going to catch fire. He started swearing at Jason. He pulled Jason out of his bed. opened the front door and threw him out into the snow. Norm yelled out in anger. Don't come back in until I get this stove cooled off. Number 1 alarmed and upset, number 2 thrilled and joyful, number 3 touched and grateful, number 4 ashamed and guilty, number 5 encouraged and satisfied. The answer is number 1 alarmed and upset.
12번. 다음 글에 드러난 아이의 신경 변화로 가장 적절한 것은?
On my 7th birthday, my mom surprised me with a puppy waiting on a leash. It had beautiful golden fur and an adorable tail. It was exactly what I had always dreamed of. I took the dog everywhere and slept with it every night. A few months later, the dog got out of the backyard and was lost. I sat on my bed and cried for hours, while my mother watched me silently from the doorway of my room. I finally fell asleep, exhausted from my grief. My mother never said a word to me about my loss, but I knew she felt the same as I did. Number 1 delighted sorrowful, number 2 relaxed annoyed, number 3 embarrassed worried, number 4 excited horrified, number 5 disappointed satisfied. The answer is number 1 delighted sorrowful.
13번. 다음 글에 드러난 신이의 신경 변화로 가장 적절한 것은?
One day, Cindy happened to sit next to a famous artist in a cafe. And she was thrilled to see him in person. He was drawing on a used napkin over coffee. She was looking on in awe. After a few moments, the man finished his coffee, and was about to throw away the napkin as he left. Cindy stopped him. "Can I have that napkin you drew on?" she asked. "Sure," he replied. $20,000, she said, with her eyes wide open. "What? It took you like 2 minutes to draw that." "No," he said. "It took me over 60 years to draw this." Being at a loss, she stood still rooted to the ground. Number 1 relieved worried, number 2 indifferent embarrassed, number 3 excited surprised, number 4 disappointed satisfied, number 5 jealous confident. The answer is number 3 excited surprised.
14번. 다음 글에 드러난 즈의 신경 변화로 가장 적절한 것은?
The principal stepped on stage. "Now, I present this year's top academic award to the student who has achieved the highest placing." He smiled at the row of seats where 12 finalists had gathered. Zoe wiped a sweaty hand on her handkerchief and glanced at the other finalists. They all looked as pale and uneasy as herself. Zoe and one of the other finalists had won first placing in 4 subjects. So it came down to how teachers ranked their hard work and confidence. The trophy for general excellence is awarded to Miss Zoe Perry, the principal declared. "Could Zoe step this way, please?" Zoe felt as if she were in heaven. She walked into the thunder of applause with a big smile. Number 1 hopeful disappointed, number 2 guilty confident, number 3 nervous delighted, number 4 angry calm, number 5 relaxed proud. The answer is number 3 nervous delighted.
15번. 다음 글에 드러난 Anne-Marie의 신경으로 가장 적절한 것은?
Anne-Marie looked up, panting, just as she reached the corner. Her heart seemed to skip a beat. "Halt," the soldier ordered in a stern voice. The German word was as familiar as it was scary. Anne-Marie had heard it often enough before, but it had never been directed at her until now. Behind her, Ellen also slowed and stopped. Anne-Marie stared up. There were 2 of them. That meant 2 helmets, 2 sets of cold eyes glaring at her, and 4 tall, shiny boots planted firmly on the sidewalk, blocking her path to home. And it meant 2 guns, gripped in the hands of the soldiers. She was motionless as she stared at the guns. Number 1 proud and satisfied, number 2 envious and furious, number 3 tense and frightened, number 4 bored and indifferent, number 5 relieved and confident. The answer is number 3 tense and frightened.